All these years later, I'm revealing something that hasn't been told before.
In a stunning decision that has sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry and the Star Trek fanbase, Paramount Plus has officially canceled Starfleet Academy after just one season. And according to multiple sources inside the company, the cancellation came directly as a result of devastating public criticism from William Shatner. The 93-year-old legend who created Captain Kirk and became the face of Star Trek for millions around the world reportedly unleashed such a brutal, comprehensive, and widely publicized attack on Starfleet Academy that Paramount executives concluded the show had become a toxic liability that was damaging the entire Star Trek brand beyond repair. This is absolutely unprecedented. We're talking about a major streaming service canceling what was supposed to be a flagship show specifically because the most iconic actor associated with the franchise publicly destroyed it. This wasn't a mutual parting of ways or a creative decision. This was Paramount, essentially admitting that William Shatner was right, that Starfleet Academy was a disaster, and that continuing the show after Captain Kirk himself condemned it was impossible. The fact that Shatner's criticism alone could trigger such a dramatic response demonstrates the unique position he holds in Star Trek history and in popular culture generally. When William Shatner speaks about Star Trek, his words carry more weight than critics, than fan communities, than even executives running the franchise. He is Star Trek to multiple generations, and when he says a show isn't real Trek and doesn't deserve to exist, that judgment is essentially final. Let's break down exactly what William Shatner said that was so devastating it killed Starfleet Academy, how Paramount responded to his criticism, why they concluded cancellation was the only option, and what this means for the future of Star Trek and for how studios handle franchise legacy when their own legends turn against them. According to sources and public reports, William Shatner's criticism of Starfleet Academy began almost immediately after the show premiered. Unlike many actors who stay diplomatically silent about projects they dislike, Shatner started making comments on social media and in interviews that made his opinion unmistakably clear. He thought the show was terrible and was embarrassed that it carried the Star Trek name. Shatner's initial comments were reportedly relatively restrained by his standards. He posted on social media something like, "Watched the first episode of Starfleet Academy. This is what passes for Star Trek now? Disappointing doesn't begin to cover it." That post alone generated massive attention because it was William Shatner, Captain Kirk himself, publicly panning a current Star Trek show. But according to sources, Shatner was just getting started. Over the following weeks, as more episodes of Starfleet Academy aired, Shatner's criticism became more detailed, more frequent, and more brutal. He started posting specific critiques of writing quality, character development, and creative choices that demonstrated he wasn't just casually dismissing the show, he was actually watching it and analyzing why it was failing. One particularly damaging post from Shatner allegedly said, "Starfleet Academy has characters who exist to check diversity boxes rather than to be compelling people. It has dialogue that sounds like it was written by political activists rather than by storytellers. It has plots that make no sense and pacing that's simultaneously rushed and boring. This isn't Star Trek. This is bad television wearing a Starfleet uniform." That level of specific, substantive criticism from William Shatner was devastating because it couldn't be dismissed as out-of-touch complaining or resistance to change. Shatner was making detailed analytical points about craft and quality that resonated with fans who had similar concerns, and that gave permission to critics who might have been hesitant to be too harsh about a Star Trek show. The situation escalated dramatically when Shatner allegedly gave an interview to a major entertainment outlet where he expanded on his criticism at length. According to people who've seen the full interview, Shatner didn't hold back in any way. He reportedly said things like, "Gene Roddenberry created Star Trek to show humanity at its best, working together to explore the unknown and to solve problems through intelligence and cooperation. Starfleet Academy shows humanity divided by identity politics, obsessed with grievance and oppression, and more interested in delivering political lectures than in exploring or inspiring. That's not just bad Star Trek. It's the opposite of what Star Trek should be." Shatner allegedly continued, I'm 93 years old. I've been associated with Star Trek for nearly 60 years. I helped create Captain Kirk and the original series that started this entire franchise, and I'm telling you as directly as I can, Starfleet Academy is an embarrassment. It's poorly written, badly acted, and ideologically compromised. It prioritizes political correctness over quality, and it betrays everything Gene Roddenberry built. The most damaging part of Shatner's criticism, according to sources, was when he addressed the diversity and woke controversy directly. Shatner reportedly said, "Star Trek was diverse in the 1960s when it actually meant something to show different races and cultures working together as equals. We had Uhura on the bridge, we had Sulu and Chekhov, we showed a vision of unity that was revolutionary for its time. But our diversity was integrated into the storytelling. It wasn't the story itself. Starfleet Academy makes every character's identity their defining characteristic. That's not progressive. That's tokenism. And it's insulting to the actors and to the audience." Shatner's use of his personal Star Trek history and his role in creating the franchise's diversity legacy gave his criticism enormous credibility. This wasn't some random person complaining about wokeness. This was the man who starred alongside Nichelle Nichols in groundbreaking interracial scenes, saying that modern Star Trek's approach to diversity is actually worse than what they did in the 1960s. The interview allegedly included Shatner making specific comparisons between Starfleet Academy and the original series that highlighted how far the franchise had fallen. He reportedly said, "In the original series, we told stories about parallel universes, time travel, alien civilizations, moral dilemmas. We used science fiction to explore big ideas and to make audiences think. Starfleet Academy tells stories about, what? Cadets dealing with microaggressions? Characters giving speeches about systemic oppression? That's not science fiction. That's a college diversity seminar with Star Trek costumes." Shatner also allegedly addressed the financial and business failure of Starfleet Academy directly. Paramount spent massive amounts of money making this show. The viewership has been disappointing. The critical reception has been poor. Fans are angry and disappointed, and the show is damaging the Star Trek brand by associating it with low-quality, politically heavy-handed content. From a business perspective alone, continuing this show makes no sense. The most explosive moment in the interview reportedly came when Shatner was asked whether Starfleet Academy could be improved or whether it was fundamentally flawed. According to sources, Shatner responded, "You can't fix this show with better writing or better acting, though both would help. The fundamental problem is that it was conceived with wrong priorities. The creators wanted to make a political statement using Star Trek rather than wanting to make great Star Trek that happened to include diverse characters. When your priorities are that backwards, you can't fix it. You can only cancel it and start over with people who understand what Star Trek should be." That statement, William Shatner explicitly calling for Starfleet Academy to be canceled, was a bombshell that created immediate crisis at Paramount. According to insiders, Paramount executives held emergency meetings to discuss how to respond to Shatner's criticism and whether the show could survive such a devastating attack from the franchise's most iconic figure. The discussion at Paramount reportedly centered on several key questions. First, was Shatner's criticism actually damaging the show's viewership and reception? Or was it just generating controversy that didn't translate to business impact? The data apparently showed that Shatner's comments were significantly affecting how audiences perceived and engaged with the show. Viewership had declined after his criticism went viral, social media sentiment had turned even more negative, and the show was being mocked and criticized in ways that used Shatner's specific language and arguments. Second, could Paramount effectively defend the show or counter Shatner's criticism? The answer was apparently no. How do you argue against Captain Kirk when he's making substantive points about quality and creative direction? How do you dismiss someone who helped create Star Trek and who has more credibility on the subject than anyone alive? Paramount concluded that any attempt to defend Starfleet Academy against Shatner would make them look foolish and would only amplify the criticism. Third, what were the long-term brand implications of continuing a show that William Shatner had publicly condemned? According to insiders, this was the decisive question. Paramount executives concluded that keeping Starfleet Academy on the air after Shatner's devastating critique would permanently associate Star Trek with failure and controversy in ways that would damage the franchise for years. Every article about the show would mention Shatner's criticism. Every discussion about Star Trek would include his condemnation. The brand damage was simply too severe to justify continuing. The decision to cancel reportedly came from the highest levels of Paramount Global, with executives concluding that cutting their losses on Starfleet Academy was necessary to protect the Star Trek brand and to signal that they were taking the criticism seriously. According to sources, there were discussions about whether to try to negotiate with Shatner to see if there was any way to get him to soften or retract his criticism. But those discussions went nowhere because Shatner apparently has no interest in walking back statements he clearly believes and wanted to make. The official cancellation announcement came approximately 2 weeks after Shatner's interview was published. The statement was carefully worded to avoid explicitly admitting that Shatner's criticism triggered the decision, but insiders say that's exactly what happened. Paramount said something like, "After careful consideration of creative direction and audience reception, Paramount Plus has decided not to move forward with additional seasons of Starfleet Academy. We're grateful to the talented cast and crew for their work on the series and remain committed to creating Star Trek content that honors the franchise's legacy." That phrase, "honors the franchise's legacy," was reportedly inserted specifically as an acknowledgement of Shatner's criticism about how Starfleet Academy betrayed Star Trek's values. It was Paramount's way of saying, "We heard you, Captain Kirk," without explicitly admitting that one actor's criticism killed their show. The reaction to the cancellation has been massive and overwhelmingly focused on Shatner's role in it. Star Trek fans are celebrating William Shatner as a hero who saved the franchise by speaking truth to power and forcing Paramount to acknowledge their mistakes. Social media is filled with posts thanking Shatner for his courage in criticizing the show and for using his legendary status to protect Star Trek's legacy. The phrase, "Shatner killed Starfleet Academy," has become a meme, with fans treating it as a badge of honor rather than a criticism. They're framing Shatner's role as Captain Kirk, making the hard decision to protect his crew and his ship. In this case, protecting Star Trek from people who were destroying it. Entertainment journalists and industry observers are focused on the unprecedented nature of a franchise icon single-handedly destroying a current show through public criticism. This kind of thing simply doesn't happen. Legacy actors usually stay diplomatically silent about shows they dislike, or they make mild criticisms that don't threaten the show's existence. Shatner's willingness to go nuclear and explicitly call for cancellation represents a level of franchise intervention that has no real precedent. Progressive critics and defenders of Starfleet Academy are attacking Shatner, accusing him of being out of touch, of opposing diversity, of using his platform to sabotage a show that was trying to be inclusive and modern. But these attacks haven't gained much traction because Shatner's criticisms were substantive and specific rather than vague or obviously politically motivated, and because his role in creating Star Trek's original diversity gives him enormous credibility on the subject. The cast and crew of Starfleet Academy are reportedly devastated and angry. According to sources, some blame Shatner for destroying their show and their jobs through what they see as unfair criticism driven by his political views. Others privately acknowledge that Shatner's specific criticisms about writing and quality were accurate, even if they wish he'd been less public about them. The cancellation has also reignited discussions about who has authority over Star Trek's creative direction. Paramount legally owns the franchise, but William Shatner's criticism demonstrates that moral authority over Star Trek belongs to the people who created it and made it successful. When there's a conflict between corporate ownership and creative legacy, Shatner's intervention shows that legacy can win if the creator has enough credibility and is willing to use it. The broader implications for franchise management are significant. Studios now know that they can't completely ignore or dismiss franchise legends when making creative decisions about legacy properties. If you alienate the actors and creators who built the franchise, they can potentially destroy your new projects by publicly criticizing them in ways that audiences find credible and compelling. This could make studios more cautious about making dramatic changes to beloved franchises, or more likely to consult with franchise veterans during development. It could also embolden other franchise legends to speak out about projects they dislike, knowing that Shatner successfully used his platform to kill a show he thought was betraying Star Trek. For William Shatner personally, this represents a capstone to his Star Trek legacy. At 93 years old, he used his credibility and platform to save the franchise he helped create from what he saw as destruction by incompetent leadership. Future Star Trek historians will remember Shatner not just as the actor who played Kirk, but as the man who stood up to Paramount when they were making terrible creative decisions and forced them to course correct. The question now is what Paramount does next with Star Trek. The cancellation of Starfleet Academy after Shatner's criticism sends a message that they're willing to acknowledge mistakes and make changes. But will those changes be superficial or fundamental? Will they actually bring in new creative leadership with different priorities, or will they make minor adjustments while continuing the same basic approach that failed with Starfleet Academy? Shatner has reportedly said publicly that he's watching to see what Paramount does next and that he won't hesitate to speak out again if they continue making bad Star Trek. That threat that Captain Kirk is watching and will call them out might be enough to keep Paramount honest and force them to take quality more seriously. The cancellation of Starfleet Academy after William Shatner's backlash is a watershed moment in Star Trek history and in franchise management generally. It demonstrates that creative legacy and fan passion can still matter in an industry increasingly driven by corporate metrics and political agendas. It shows that one person with sufficient credibility and courage can make a difference even against massive corporate power. And it proves that William Shatner, at 93 years old, is still Captain Kirk. Still willing to make the hard calls, still willing to fight for what he believes in, and still capable of changing the course of history when he sees his ship heading toward disaster. Paramount tried to ignore the warnings. They tried to stay the course, but Captain Kirk doesn't accept no-win scenarios, and when he decided Starfleet Academy needed to be stopped, not even a major corporation could stand in his way. The show is dead. Long live the captain who killed it to save Star Trek.